Yo, what's up, guys? Nate here with Phillip. We just got back from Kansas City Collecticon, and that is what this episode is about. There's lots of topics within this episode because we definitely had our eyes open to a few things with the hobby. And
yes, we did.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So, what's going on, man?
Not too much, not too much. I actually didn't buy as much as I was planning to. I was planning to do a little mixture of buying and selling, but I had a great time nonetheless. And honestly, the learning experience I had beat any sort of crazy deal I could have potentially had. So,
Yeah. It wasn't like really a surprise for me. Like I've been to events like this before and pretty status quo, but it was cool. This was my first Collecticon itself though. And it was cool just seeing like the Pokemon focus. It was definitely like the biggest Pokemon event for sure. But yeah, the booths were great. You had a lot of people in the hobby around. And I went in with, just a handful of things, but I ended up doing pretty well with those things, given my options were limited. But I wasn't really looking to sell much, but yeah, did pretty well either way. But we're going to be talking about that, our experiences, some sealed product, the future of sealed product, because we got to see a little bit of that. What else we got? We got I want to talk about the Moonbreon a little bit, the special livery Charizards that we saw for sale. And we're going to touch on the vendors themselves and the overall vibe. A lot of the vendors were kind of new. And there was...
very new.
Yeah, there are some things that we can go over with that. But, yeah, we'll check out the news first. I guess our biggest piece of news is that our PSA order has a tracking number, and it is coming back. Oh, we were eyeballing the PSA booth at Collecticon.
Just a little bit. We were talking a little smack as we weren't actually giving these workers grief because we know it's not these guys' fault.
Yeah.
But we had a little bit of commentary every time we walked by, where the hell are our cards at? 2 years and here you are allowing bulk service and taking cards here at these Collecticons.
They listened to our podcast last week. The one where we finally broke and heard our negative things that we had to say, and they're like, okay, we got to treat these guys right. That's exactly what it was.
We're about to send them a lot of cards, where we'd like to, and some of them are going to potentially be sleeper hits in about a year's time. We can touch that up on another time, though, but...
Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot, and a lot of that money I could turn into more graded cards, so I could be doing good for them. But
yeah, there's actually after going through cards from my collection, because after we'll touch up on it more, but after kind of having my eyes open on a few things, I kind of I'm trying to sell just a little bit now, and I was hoping as I was going through my collection, I was seeing some cards that I really should submit to PSA, and especially in the bulk service, and I was like, well, I really don't want to give them more money as I'm still waiting on my first order, but, sure enough, not a day, not 24 hours after those thoughts.
Here we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot that I could send at higher tiers, and I'd like to knock those out, but, every time something like this happens, like I go to an event or something, or I accumulate a lot of cards over time, I go through, I've talked about this on the podcast before, where I go through like a clean out phase of my collection and I sell off the extra. And I think, that's essentially what you did when we got home.
What I'm in process of trying to do, it's kind of a slow burn with a few of these vendors that we met.
Yeah.
From but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's a large collection. It's kind of chaotic. It's a lot of different moving pieces within the collection, and I feel like it might be too much for these guys to handle. But we'll see.
Yeah, you'd almost do like a deal, like, okay, here's the booster boxes I have, and then sell those, and then here's the singles I have.
I think I'm gonna have to pretty much do something like that. Seal products, graded cards, ungraded cards,
Because
or
singles are,
I might just keep the ungraded cards at this point, honestly.
yeah, and those are cards. Yeah, I mean, if you grade them down the road, like even if they are sent in a bulk submission, you'll make a little bit more. So
Well, that's what it is. It's basically when during my pack heydays, I was opening all these packs. It's basically all the hits or decent pulls from those packs, and I mean, I opened several thousand in a pretty pretty short window. So you can imagine there's quite a bit. And I bought some collections, so there's that. So there's definitely another order I can do, and definitely hopped on a little bit of a Disney train. So
yeah,
I'd like to submit a few of those cards, but
I think we talked about Disney Lorcana in our last episode. We will touch on that a little bit in this
yeah.
one. Um, we got some pretty hefty news that we can't exactly share, but we can
We
share our.
could, but we can't
Uh,
say who. Maybe. I don't know.
hey, I'm okay. He's just a random guy to us, so he
Yeah.
told random people, so we can tell random people too.
Oh, yeah. So we are in agreement. I thought you seemed like you were hesitant. No, 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 absolutely. I was hoping we'd be able to say a little something about that, but
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of disclaimers with that too, but
yeah.
yeah. So PSA orders coming back. I myself am also selling off some stuff because I just got this urge to really hone in on my goals. I'll talk about what I sold, in the main topic, but it's a lot of WotC, and I'm the WotC guy. But I mean, I'm just trimming off some because a lot of WotC just isn't, holding up to modern, and we'll touch on that for sure. But other news, I mean, we have Pokemon officially launching in China. It's officially like, simplified Chinese. I think they released in like traditional Chinese a couple years ago in like Hong Kong and somewhere else, but we're officially getting a full scale Chinese release, and that is a lot of people, and it's a brand new language. It's going to be quite the market over there.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting because of some of the Chinese censorship, but like I don't think you're allowed to have like a ghost movie in China. So there's ghost Pokemon. So
Yeah,
how does that work?
but just think
So
of all the sweet promos we're going to get for like the Chinese New Year, Chinese holidays.
I
Hopefully.
mean, there's definitely good promos that just won't involve ghost Pokemon.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get a fortune
Uh,
cat or something.
yeah. But what's interesting is like the product that they have in this image. I find it very interesting. It's very reminiscent of base set booster box in some ways. Obviously, that's not quite the product, but like just the image has that. It's what they're kind of going for,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I saw that. It's got Mewtwo and Charizard on it, of course. But yeah, that's a pretty cool product. It's labeled like AC1A, so I'm not sure what that is. Let me see if I can find something on it. Let's see. Their releases match exactly like how they released in Japan too. So that's another thing. But looks like they have two Sun and Moon compilation sets. So maybe they're taking like the best of Sun and Moon.
It's kind of the
And
vibe I got because thought I saw something about Ultra Shiny GX in here. I don't know. Oh, that was what Hong Kong and Taiwan were released with. So it makes sense to just start off with a bang. And Hidden
yeah,
Fates is a great set to have as the first one. Honestly, it really is. And then you basically release things quickly, just the best of the best, until you get up to Scarlet and Violet. Is kind of what it looks like.
yeah. They're talking about the you know, Pokemon TCG having an organized play thing, but China's very strict about gaming and children, so they're going to have a lot of hoops to jump through with that stuff. But yeah, that's a pretty big market, pretty big news to hop in.
Yeah, it would be interesting how some of those products might hold up. I don't know if because that the Chinese market is a massive market. Um, so there could potentially be significantly more people vying for these products years down the road than what you would have. I know they're going to be making more, but it would just
Yeah.
be interesting to wonder how some of these might fare long term. I can't help but just kind of wonder about that.
Yeah, the only thing for me is, yeah, it just opens the door for maybe more promos, and that'll be cool. But I don't know, it's probably going to be pretty hesitant to do something like that, I'm sure, because they already are. But yeah, for other news and foreign news, we have Japanese Paradigm Trigger, which is
Hmm.
the other half of Silver Tempest that's coming out for us here, like in a month or so, maybe a month and a half. But we have a Lugia artwork on the Silver Tempest, so we can assume that Lugia was
And
going
the
to be
unknown,
in this one. But yeah, we got Unknown
yeah,
as well.
which is interesting. I'm not saying that they'll go all the unknowns, but an unknown alt art could be incredible. They could really go very unique on that one. They could even do multiple alt arts on that one, potentially telling a story. Kind of like a something like a Head Legends card meet the Charizard cards sort of thing. That's telling the story, like for the Venusaur Charizard for those cards, maybe something that's kind of reminiscent of one of the Pokemon movies. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. We do have Lugia. We have a Lugia full art and Lugia V and V Star. The V artwork is done by Arita, and it looks like so much cooler than the full art V and the V Star. Like that's what like a menacing Lugia looks like. He's like in the ocean popping out. Just a really cool card. You guys got to go check it out. Hopefully we have an alt art of that style. I mean, it almost reminds you of like a legend piece, like how the Legends Lugia looks like in the water. Like he's like popping out of the water, and it looks pretty sick.
That's the exact vibe. I like that was the first thing I thought of was the Legends Lugia, honestly.
Yeah, it does look pretty good. Yeah, we have an unknown V, like the unknown V on a V card. So we have an unknown V, and then the V star of the unknown has V star spelled out. So it's got five unknown kind of swirling through space. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I hope we get an alt art, like you said. I mean, people love unknown. There was, I think it was Unseen Forces, where every single letter of the alphabet had an unknown hollow card in the set as a secret rare. I'm like, that would be cool. But
Well, in the Neo sets, they had all the unknowns like spread throughout. Um, of course, it was more reminiscent of the movie from the time.
yeah,
There wasn't a whole lot of variety for it,
these
but
were like a whole subset of a set. There was like
mm,
20 something unknowns that were all hollow and all secret rares. So it was pretty sick. But
yeah, I'm checking out the Shinji Kanda card that they showed too. That one's pretty cool. Did you
which
see
one
that
is
one?
that?
It is the whatever the it's Beham, whatever the Elegum or whatever evolution, the alien thingy.
Oh yeah, you can definitely tell for sure.
Yeah, it's just incredible, honestly.
But yeah, any other news that popped up? I mean, that's kind of really all I had. Not too much.
No, just we can kind of touch that more in the main topic as well. But the Charizard, basically, you can get that for like $30 at this point.
Yeah. So if you guys, yeah, don't make it to the main topic, take this advice if you're doing a special livery Charizard, and do not buy one for like more than I say $50, but maybe even $40. Unless like if you're buying one for $40, make sure it's the exact condition you want, like a really good one. Because codes right now are going for $5 and you can buy a code for $5. Do 2 3 packs in your cart on the Pokemon Center. It comes out to be like $22, and you can get the Charizard card. So, in theory, the Charizard should be only worth 25 to $30. But again, you're not guaranteed the condition when it's thrown in the box with your stuff. So there is that problem. But
If
that's
you just
what.
want the card and don't care about condition, though, I mean that works for you.
Yeah,
You
I'd
know,
say if you don't care about the condition, just go buy a code and buy $20 of stuff. Um, if you want a like perfect Charizard, maybe paying $40 is the mark because you're not gambling. But I don't know. It's a weird time. They were selling those things for like $60, and there was multiple
$80 in
people.
some areas.
Yeah, there's multiple people like interested, and like I almost like had to tell them like, dude, don't buy that. The codes are so cheap right now. But there, yeah, there's these one guys. I guess we might as well just mention it since we're already on it. But the this one booth that had like 20 of them, I actually like looked through every single one, and I found only 2 of them that were like good centering that you couldn't tell by the naked eye that they were off. And out of those 2, one of them had the crimp lines on the bottom. So out of the condition and centering is not too good on them. So there's that. But yeah, it's just a weird situation. But let's fire up the main topic though. Well, I guess we can have that start off, since we're already in there. How low do you think they'll go?
Well, I mean, I think I said no lower than pretty much 25, 30, and I think we're at that point. So it looks like I've said probably 40, 50 is what I kind of thought after I started seeing all these coming out. But then I think I said even 30. I know you kind of mentioned around that price. I mean, I knew they were most likely going to print these things to an oblivion. Just the way Pokemon's trend has been since the pandemic is just print, yes, and some parts to demand, but that demand is able to consume the product on most shelves. So I just assumed, honestly, with that it was a no-brainer that they must be doing the same thing with this promo. That's the only reason why they're even doing it, because they couldn't have been able to ensure that people that wanted the Charizard would have occurred, and they couldn't have controlled the secondary market whenever it was the same print run as, say, the special delivered Pikachu. I'm sure those cards probably going to hit like $1,000 easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I think my thing for it was that it was going to outperform the Bidoof. And then after just seeing how many there were at CollectCon and then seeing how many codes people have still, like people are trying to offload literally hundreds of codes right now for $5. And so that just made me think like, holy cow, like, yeah, maybe a PSA 10 will still outperform a Bidoof just because it's Charizard and because the condition is so, a coin flip. Like, I think long term, I originally thought 5 years that Charizard would outpace a Bidoof. Now, after seeing all that, I'm thinking like 10. But then I
Not even
also
that
have to,
much.
well, you also have to think too, like these codes and like the thing you buy off the Pokemon Center are only limited to one address. So if I wanted to buy another code, and which I don't know if I mentioned that, I myself bought a code for $5. And just got my card in today, which I'll show off in a video this week. But, if I wanted to get another code, I would have to like put in a different address and then have the stuff shipped to that address. So like, I think people are going to be caught with codes that they literally can't give away because everyone who wants one either already bought one. And like, I maybe know of like 3 addresses I could use, and that's about it. So unless I start asking friends and like my brother or something, but it's like for given what the card is, it's not really worth. Maybe I could understand getting a second or third if it's like your parents and your grandma or your parents and your wife's parents or something easy like that. But it's really not worth it, like getting more than that. But there's just so many codes and like, yeah, how many addresses can you like
Well,
come up with?
I want to say what's funny is we have yet to receive an email.
Yeah,
I find
we
that,
we haven't got our code.
which means these guys were able to successfully use thousands of bot accounts if they have this many, and that I just find that ridiculous. Yet we can't even get one, and at this point, I don't expect to get one. I mean, we're in like what, a week 11,
Yeah.
something like that, week 10, 11. I mean, there's only like maybe a week or two left.
I had
So
I had hope that, you know, they mentioned that they had something in place to combat the bots, but I don't think there really was anything in place to get the codes. I think what they meant was is that you can only, ship to one address and then that's one and done. So yeah, that works, but I mean they're still making money like selling the codes. So
even if it's just $5, it's basically an easy $5.
yeah. So
So
there's got to be something new, or like run a promotion like if you spend $10 on the Pokemon Center, you have a chance of getting a code, and then like only send out one code per one address, and like make it clear, like, or they could even like, I don't know, run something that you can purchase on the Pokemon Center, like even if it's free, like just have everyone go through a process and like ship out the code, or like email it with a linked address and then somehow filter
yeah,
them
I hope
out.
honestly, I hope that they can do more if they continue to do this sort of promo in the future. But I think overall it was handled decently with how bad it could have been and how bad it has been. So I think they have learned and they have applied a few of those factors to this, and I think you'll continue seeing those factors long term. In fact, they're even, this is somewhat different, but they're even starting to put like security features now on Japanese booster boxes. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I forgot we were going to mention. Maybe, yeah, the little tear strip now on Japanese booster boxes, kind of keeping from people from resealing. But yeah, and then no matter what the process, I mean, it's really not a problem if they just print it to the ground, which seems like they did. So maybe they just went that route. But I don't know. It seems like there's an easier way. But let's talk
yeah,
about
I would say we've been talking about the Charizard a little too much. So
let's talk about what we bought, or like what we sold. So like overall, give us a rundown of your whole experience, and then I'll give mine, and then we can jump in starting with that
so
Japanese news. Talk about some sealed.
so my experience, just in terms of wheeling and dealing and buying, um, was in a lot of ways like I'm very familiar with this sort of business. I do it every day, not with cards, but with used, basically secondhand buying. Um, so I'm very familiar with haggling, the behaviors surrounding that, a lot of the some of the norms and expectations you have. So I was pretty much experienced out the gate, even though I've never actually been to a card show like this or a Collecticon. Um, and one of the things that kind of surprised me was how many places were actually willing to buy some of my slabs. I thought my slabs were junk slabs. Like they've been on eBay for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, a long time. And I have been unsuccessful in trying to sell these cards. And in my opinion, a good portion of them were essentially junk slabs. It was modern, it was VP cards, and I mean they're pretty much all nines. I'm like, there's no way people actually are like, want these, but I was wrong, and they gave me $12 in trade, essentially. And I was like, what? You're gonna give me how much? I was willing to accept like $4. Like I was willing to go in just like a booster pack. Going in, that was what I was hoping. And basically with this conversation, I was like, what are you trying to get out of? Well, they asked me, well, what are you trying to get out of it? I was like, well, I'm well familiar. Well, he's basically trying to set the price, but I didn't allow that. So I said, well, what are you willing to give me for it?
Yeah.
And he set his price, and I was like, okay, absolutely, because I knew it was low, but I was curious to see what I was going to get out of it. So he said $12 for most of them. There was a couple he didn't take, and a few of them was one of them was actually interesting. It was one potentially I don't know if you recognize it was a PSA 7, but it was one of the it was the Electabuzz secret rare from what was that? Not Next Destinies? No,
Was it the
it was.
Hollow?
Yeah, it was from the era. Like it was around the era. I forget
It's
which
either
set
like
it
Supreme Victors or an RC
was. Supreme.
set, somewhere right around there.
I know it was around that era. And anyways, he said no to that one. I understood, and he said if no to the other ones from the. I think it might have been the black white era of a Latios and Latios. That one had a stamp, and I mean those cards were going for $130, but very few people were interested in those cards, and they said no to it, which I understood. But anyways, they basically the amount that they told me in trade was, I mean, spot on with what I evaluated at, like going off eBay's fees, not like what I could sell on eBay, but going after eBay's fees. So I was like, score. I said to you, I was like, nowhere else is going to give us anywhere close to this.
Yeah.
And I went with the cash, but I was pretty hyped up. This was pretty early on Saturday, and I probably should have taken trade and cash. See if I could have gone down to a little bit of trade, a little bit of cash. I just took the cash, and one of the next places I did, I was thinking like, oh, come on, I'm going to get a base set booster pack because we walked by somebody that had a base set box open, unlimited, but we ended up going with somebody else who was cheaper. And I figured, okay, I'm going to use this and apply a little bit of cash, and I'm going to try to get even something else. Didn't know what. I was kind of thinking the Moonbreon or maybe a PSA 10 Munch Psyduck. But I found out really quickly that I should just be trying to offload this pack when vendor after vendor refuse the base set booster pack. They refuse because everybody was so scared off from it potentially being fake because they didn't have confidence in their abilities and being able to spot a potential fake base set booster pack. Is some of that absolutely from the Logan Paul fake case? Absolutely.
And
And
it's kind
I
of a
just think,
problem in modern now too, with Evolving Skies, Navy Heroes, even in Japan.
and the safety feature will help, but what about everything up until this point? And I didn't read the full article on it, but the only thing I saw was it was just going to be the booster boxes. I didn't see anything about a tamper-proof collection box being the same way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's
I would
weird.
say I found another vendor that was able to take more of my cards. So the money I basically would have successfully had in trade was pretty close to what I estimated. And the amount that these places were giving me to trade was, to me, a complete shock. Because whenever I work with secondhand, we try to give them no more than certain items vary. We'll have to give up to 50%, but that's pretty much it. Like that's the high end of what we would give. And these places were talking 70, almost 75% in some cases with trade.
Yeah.
So to me, that just blew my mind. I guess I was naive to how these card stores deal with the plurality of sales when making profit, whereas the individual cards. I mean, it makes sense though because in order to buy these cards, and there's a lot of competition right now with vendors. There's a lot of places that are buying for cards, even though Pokemon is pointing to oblivion, and we did see that with Modern at these places that a lot of people didn't want. There were several instances where it did make it worth it. But
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I saw or was surprised about, like, in doing that, is the base set pack and, like, the interaction with the vendors with the sealed. Because this all happened before I even made a move. And, yeah, for the trip, I decided to bring basically jungle and fossil extra stuff. Like, I've come to realize, like, a lot of my jungle and fossil stuff I just had just because. Like, I had an entire first edition base set. Um, and then with that, I collected a first edition jungle fossil. I figured, with those three sets, you can get all the Pokemon and it's cool to have them all. Um, but, I kind of grew out of jungle and fossil, and I'd almost rather sell my jungle and fossil and just buy more first ed base because, like, that's where it's at, in WotC. So I just kind of saw it as extra stuff. I ended up bringing the first edition jungle and fossil sets, 100% complete, hollows and all, near mint excellent condition, that were in my binders. That's what I brought. But with that, I also had a art set of jungle and fossil booster packs that were straight from a booster box that I bought, and two of the jungle packs were heavy. So I was carrying those things around and seeing your interaction with this base set pack. And not gonna lie, I kind of started to get a little worried. Like, you know, am I even gonna be able to like sell these things?
I think
So
we went. I just say I think we asked. God, it was a lot. We went through at least six because we didn't go through everybody. There's some places where you can just tell they weren't gonna like dabble with it. But we asked quite a bit, and we had no luck.
yeah,
And finally, I was at the point where I was looking up. I was starting to get a little bummed, honestly, because one, the plan wasn't quite going as I wanted to. I was starting to look at PSA 9, PSA 8 graded packs for base set because that might be what I had to do to get my money back. And I was like, okay, and if it's a PSA 8, I'll break even with eBay's fees based on what these are going for on eBay. Um, and I was actually, I was getting myself hyped up and excited for it. I was like, well, PSA 9 could sell for like $700.
yeah.
I could make a little bit of money here.
And it was
Uh,
and it was a solid buy. Like you could sell it on eBay and like make it back, but yeah, like your goal was to convert those slabs into something like tradable or sellable and then like continue on. So, I mean, it was a solid buy, but it was really like just the whole situation at the convention itself, like with them being sketched out, that was like the giant
well,
firewall for you.
I mean, you had the guy who basically said the seal looked good, everything looked good. I'm like, dude, I bought this today. And I mean, he doesn't know me, whatever. I mean, any scan artist would say the same thing. And his basically, he like even probably admitted it was probably legit, but he was like, there's like, I guess to him, it was probably like a 20% chance it was fake because of, from what his opinion was, the vibrancy of the color of the Charizard. So it was a Charizard Unlimited pack,
Yeah.
but the vibrancy of like the color, like he said, was off. And I'm like, dude, that's it. Like he said that, I'm like, okay, whatever. But like you see that even in the cards because they were using countless different printers. They were
Yeah.
using different companies for these materials. They were using like that's why there's such variations in shades and color, and they were printing off so much that in some cases with the ink that you could see if you could even have a card where the ink was starting to run out and you could tell.
Yeah, there's so much variation, especially in Shadowless and first edition base set. Even in normal base set, there's some, but not as much. But um, yeah, we went back and looked at one of my Instagram posts where I had like four base set packs side by side, and I even made a post like comparing two packs and how different they were because that's just normal. So yeah, varies quite a bit for sure.
So that was a huge eye opener, seeing this almost universal rebuke at these shows for WotC. And it was also alarming to me how few of these new vendors, like the people that kind of came up during pandemic and after pandemic, have very little experience with WotC. And I mean, it makes sense because when they came in, these base set packs were several hundred out the gate. So, and they're at the age, some of these people were at the age where base set wasn't necessarily what they started out with.
I
They
was
started
getting,
off with, I don't know, some other gin, but it wasn't base set because they're that much younger than us in some cases.
yeah, and I was gonna say like, of course we get where they're coming from. They're trying not to get burned, like it's their
Absolutely.
livelihood. But yeah, I mean the biggest problem came down to them being so new, which is another thing we're gonna touch on. Like the vendors, like most of the Pokemon vendors, aside from the big groups who were streaming, and those were the guys who were buying like the junk slabs because they
Hmm.
could sell them on Whatnot or they could give them away. Like
Yeah, they
they have
said
so much more
mystery boxes.
options. Yeah,
Yeah,
mystery
mystery boxes. They just
boxes.
throw them in. Yeah.
So yeah, they have like means of getting rid of that stuff. So in a way, like junk slabs were kind of pretty hot because like they need the inventory for mystery boxes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, the
And right
biggest
now, the market hasn't adjusted for the cost of grading as well, is also another factor. So,
Yeah, it is why the mystery boxes are just becoming such a thing now, and it's I think direct correlation with how many junk slabs were graded, and a lot of these companies like those guys are taking advantage of that, and it's a smart move, but if you don't have access to that, it's also a pretty good move to sell them those because they'll give you a pretty fair value, but.
yeah.
Yeah, it mostly comes down to just the guys being so new and not so experienced. So, yeah, like,
But
yeah,
I'm gonna say
continue your story.
well, I was gonna say, one of the eye openers for that was all sealed. All sealed is going to be this suspect as technology increases. The cost of that technology, especially high end technology, or what's high end technology, becomes more widely available. You're going to be seeing this issue. It's going to be no different. I mean, you got 3D printers that can make just about anything you can imagine with almost matching functionality. It's not too far fetched to be able to duplicate some of these materials. I mean, it's going to be very accessible, and it's going to be, I think, sooner than what we might realize. And because of that, well, I'll go into that later. But anyways, the rest of my story was we finally did find somebody that was interested. But before then, there was a very negative interaction I had. At first, the guy, I thought he was cool because I finally found somebody that I thought was going to buy it. But he didn't trust his own faith in identifying a pack, which is fine. We went over to this other guy who was clearly, he was experienced. This guy's been around for a long time within the hobby. He grew up with it. You could tell he was probably about maybe early 40s. And they went by his opinion, and his opinion said he said he's not saying it's fake, but the shading is what made it to where he didn't want to buy it. And this other vendor that are right next to each other, the one that was interested in buying it, especially potentially for a Moonbreon, which I was stoked. I was like, perfect conditions. Oh, this is meant to be. He has a moment. He comes over as this is going down, and he was like, "What did the guy say?" And I was like, "Well," and then the other guy started talking, the other vendor, and then after he pretty much said, not saying it's fake, but there's like a 20% chance essentially that it might be because of the shading, but even though it's probably really less than that. This guy's like, oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
Like,
and then he
I was like,
basically
you are
like,
way too peppy. Like, I realize it's a different type of, I mean, it's a similar business, and like there's variations of customer service that are allowed in this hobby, but holy cow, like you just pretty much felt like backhanded me right now with that tone, and I just kind of like rolled my eyes when he said that. I was just like, I just want to get out of here.
yeah, and it didn't help. Like after that, he pretty much like just turned to the other guy and like just started having another conversation, and we were like, oh, okay. But yeah, those two guys were honestly like the only negative thing about the convention, because I also was at that same guy's booth not long after, and there was a guy right beside me looking to buy a Dragon Ball Z box, and he he
The one
mentioned,
that was all peppy, right? The one that was all
yeah,
peppy.
well,
Yeah.
there you
Okay.
go. Yeah, he this guy wanted to buy a DBZ Super booster box, and he looked at the guy like, "Hey, like what would you think about this price?" And he before he could even respond, the guy's like, I only say that because I think he was worried about offending him, and he's like, I only say that because I can buy it online right now, here at so and so for that much. And he's like, well, who is that? Like in a really snarky voice, and he's like, oh, so and so. He's like, well, I have no idea who that is. Like, kind of, you know, brushing
He's the
him off.
encyclopedia. Like he's the encyclopedia of Dragon Ball Super TCG in America. You know.
Yeah. And then at that point, like I was looking through a binder, so I wasn't paying too much attention. But I heard the guy say, yeah, like there's no way I could like do that price. Like I don't know how he's given that price. I could sell you two boxes for that price if you buy both. But he just was like very like I don't know, not too pleasant to work with. Um, and the only reason we worked with him, or tried to work with him, is because he had a long line of people like looking to sell their collections. So we were like interested in if he was offering decent prices or not. But I mean, yeah, glad we didn't really work with that guy. But
No, not at all.
so what'd you end up getting after you sold the pack? You ended up
Well,
selling it
I
eventually.
finally, I want to say, I do want to give a little bit of shout out. I know, I think we're going to do them all at the end, but I do want to give a little bit of shout out to Royal Gaming and Collectibles, because not only did were they able to identify that it was a legit pack, but they gave me a fair value. So I bought it for 350. Well, technically it was like 330 with trade and all that. Sold it for 300, but a third of that 330 I paid with trade with slabs, so I consider that already dead money. So I hadn't really had a net loss in actual cash when I sold that back to 300, and I actually had I asked for a little bit less on one of the Southern Islands Mew that I purchased, because the Mew he had was actually in near mint condition. It was very good. Um, I don't think he'll get a 9, but it's possible. I think it'll be more like an 8, but it's definitely possible for a 9 if I get a good grader, but it'll probably be an 8. But I was stoked. That was the reason why I held off on buying the Southern Islands Mew anywhere was because just sometimes buying on eBay some of these cards I just don't like, because it's so hard to tell without seeing it in person. And sometimes there's different variations and different things, but he had a Southern Islands Mew, so I got that and the rest in cash. And between all this wheeling and dealing and haggling, I also found a guy who was trying to sell his whole collection. He was very off on his estimation of his collection, but all of his cards were super mint. Um, and I got several cards that I needed, Wahatsi promos, a few Neo cards. He didn't have much. I wasn't trying to spend an arm and a leg, but like I was very happy with all the cards. Like I bought from him, I was able to get like 10 promos or something like that for like $50. I was stoked. Good near mint cards. I was able to see them all. But in terms of actual things that I bought, it was very few, in part because I spent basically a ridiculous amount of money on Disney Lorcana, but that's another story. So I was really just trying to sell more than anything, but also definitely take some cards from this event, because honestly, being at these events was amazing, and seeing such a wide array of Pokemon cards there. Being able to see these cards in person, especially very high end ones. I mean, we saw. I mean, I'm not even talking about the Heritage Auction booth that we saw,
Yeah, they
but
had some crazy stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had the whole Mario Luigi cards. You had um, there were several gold stars. There was the 276 XY promo with Charizard and Venusaur, the Charizard EX. Um, 10, there was several. There's even a few rare Poke Center cards, and then just seeing all these cards, a lot of these cards that I just would love to have, honestly, got like this fix like out of my system. Like being able to just see, just be so close to these cards, and kind of being able to see how it are, and like feel like even some cases being able to like touch the slab with like if the thinner was cool, and honestly, that got a lot out of my system.
Just
Like I didn't
had to
feel the
touch them,
need.
huh?
Yeah, I didn't feel the need to have to buy all these cards. It was good. Like even having the Charizard Unlimited base set pack, I would like to have that in the future, like the art packs. But just being able to like own that, even though it's for a few hours, was awesome. And it kind of like it's a reminder of this hobby is cyclical. You know, it's not just okay. Once you buy this is it. That's all I can get. So I mean, you can buy, sell, trade. I mean, you can do all those to get cards that you want, or just in some cases, just a pack to help hold on for a few hours. And honestly, that experience right there was a major catalyst. Being like, okay, I'm selling a bunch of my crap. Because a lot of my cards I'm holding on to just for like, or a lot of the sealed stuff I'm just holding on to more or less just to have it. And I started questioning, do I really need this when I can get something else that I might want more? Like I can always get these things again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely opens your eyes with, seeing all the stuff actually in person and getting to get your wants in sight and
Uh,
all that. Hence
oh, and
why now you're going through your whole collection seeing
I would just say
what you want.
there was one more thing with a few of these that I did forget to mention. The cost effectiveness of doing these selling and trading was pretty incredible. Honestly, it was in some ways you can almost it's almost even to like you actually get more money by doing this in some ways than if you were to just sell on eBay. Because now with the new tax law, like you're going to be hit with taxes as well. So in reality, you're getting like maybe 65% on the dollar. Whereas with these trades, all cash and trade, you can get like 70, even in some places up to 75% with trade.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I was getting more value. I just wish I would have brought everything with me. If I would have known that. Like I actually held back. I thought bringing like my 25, 30 slabs was going to be overkill, but I was wrong.
Yeah, we'll have to bring him next time and yeah. So you had a pretty good showing and then especially for your first event, you like you're doing now, like you could mentally reset and go through all your stuff and you know learn from it. But yeah, I mean, after you sold, or after you did the whole base set pack thing, like I said, I was kind of taking it slow, and I didn't really try selling stuff until after you were kind of getting the pack moving. But yeah, I pretty much had the same experience with my jungle and fossil packs. Hardly anybody wanted them or knew much about them. There was, probably out of the 20 vendors I talked to, um, a lot of people I felt wanted it for like collecting purposes, but they were there on business. So they were like,
Yeah.
well, I can't really move that, which I understood. And I knew they were going to be hard to move going in. I didn't, I wasn't set on selling them. It just was basically bringing them just to see, let's see what happens. But I did come across a guy who was, he, which I found out this was his first show. I also want to make a point of like our interaction, but I messaged him on Instagram. I messaged a lot of people I interacted with on Instagram and said, hey, good to see you. Just kind of make the connection, and maybe get some follows and some friends in the hobby. But he was pretty much into my packs. He gave me a decent offer. Probably could have gotten more just going through eBay, even with fees for the heavy packs. But for the light packs, it was pretty solid. And also, every deal I made, I tried to do like a half trade, half money, since they were kind of higher items. So I think I sold him the two heavy packs, and I got like a Evo Zard 9 and special livery Bidoof. I can't remember exactly like what order I got these in, but
You got
essentially
the Bidoof.
pretty
Yeah.
early, I
Well, you
think.
see,
Yeah,
well, to say you sold your jungle cards and the packs to two separate people,
yeah,
but
yeah. I sold
yeah.
the heavies first, and then yeah, that got things going. And I liked a lot of stuff at his booth, so I'm like, okay, I'll just sell the heavies, and we'll see what happens. Because I like the packs, and I could always buy lights and have an art set, and that'd be fine. But I for sure wanted to try to move the heavies because I don't really like. I'm never gonna open them, so I could convert those to lights. But sold them the heavies, and then kind of went on my way. I was looking for some buyers for the Jungle and Fossil complete first edition sets. Kind of the same thing. Like I feel like more people were trying to like shy away from that because it was such a large thing, and they kind of have to grade the good cards and they have to break it up, and it's a lot of work. But I did find a guy towards the end of the search. He was a really cool guy. I think it was Bone Club Collectibles, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, just let me double check. Don't want to get his name wrong. Looks like, yeah, Cubone is metal on Instagram, but his business is Bone Club Collectibles. Really solid guy, and he actually does this on a side, so it made sense why he might be interested. He was actually interested for like his collection. So really solid dude. We ended up getting a good deal done. I did do straight cash for that. I ended up buying a Neo card from him on the second day, though. But yeah, I made a really good connection with him, and we've already been talking on Instagram. Like, real solid dude. He's definitely going to be back at the Kansas City next year, so it'd be cool to catch up with him. But yeah, got that done. That felt pretty good. And then I was like on a roll. I was pretty cash heavy and wanted to get the other jungle pack sold and then really make a move potentially for a Poncho Pikachu or something big. So the possibilities really started to open up. But I went back to the guy who bought my heavy jungle packs. This was Nerdy Bird on Instagram, so real solid dude too. I asked him, hey, you still interested in light packs? We worked out a deal for trading cash once again. And yeah, we got it done. I sold everything that I wanted to. The only things I didn't sell were a PSA 4 Skyridge Charizard, a PSA 10 Mimikyu Scream promo, and then a PSA 10 Grand Party trophy promo. But I only brought those because, I wanted to trade the Charizard for maybe a loose copy that's in a little better condition, or I wanted to convert the other two into nines and cash. But I didn't see a single one of those cards anywhere on the show. We found out from a guy on day 2 that a couple people had Skyridge Charizards that were trying to sell them, but we never ran into them. But I was happy with how it turned out for sure.
Yeah, we really did it right, I feel like. The first day we kind of scoped out, we're more focused trying to sell. Like we both weren't trying to blow all of our money at once. We were taking a deep breath. It was pretty hard. Towards the end of day 1, I did find somebody that had a Moonbreon, just straight up Moonbreon for sale. And it was more than the cash I had on hand. And I was like, do I do it? Do we come back for first thing tomorrow morning? Get the cash, come back first thing tomorrow morning. And I was like, I was starting to get a little tired. We've been up since like 6 a.m. This was about 4:30, and we were just going all day. And actually, good thing you actually were able to talk me out of it because I almost pulled the trigger on it. And the same guy you sold your heavy packs to, he also had a doof that was a great price. I just wanted to give him a shout out as well. That was Nerdy Bird. Nerdy Bird. He was very easy to talk to, and he was pretty knowledgeable too. Like you had a few cards, and you even asked a few questions on cards that I wasn't sure if he'd be able to answer, and he immediately, he had it. He knew exactly what you were talking about, and I was actually impressed
Yeah.
because he looked like he was younger than us, but
I did
he
want to
definitely was
say,
knowledgeable.
yeah, I mentioned his name, but I didn't want to go into it too much. But he was honestly one of the dudes that surprised me. You could tell he was like nervous, and we even talked about like, he just seems like really off and like kind of nervous. And turns out he probably was, because talking to him on Instagram after, like he said, that was my first event of this scale. But overall for deals though, I mean he was a pro. So yeah, shout out Nerdy Bird. He got some good deals. He had some good stuff. Super easy to talk to. Um,
Yeah,
he was probably the most knowledgeable person I interacted with myself, which is
yeah,
saying something.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And he also, when we came back through, I was drooling a little bit when he had it was the Japanese Air Ancient Mew, and I can't remember if he had a 9 or a 10, and oh my God, it just looked gorgeous. And as we mentioned in our podcast before, that's like a top 2 or 3 card for me. I bought some at the show, got a great deal on those. Three for 65 sealed. I thought I couldn't beat that. Like they're like 35 now. They're almost pushing 40 on eBay, and I was stoked that I got some of those. But anyways, he had that. He had a Japanese Umbreon. He had a lot of good stuff. And yeah, I just wanted to mention his name because I really liked interact with him. He and his buddy he was with, like, they were great people to talk to. They felt like somebody you just kind of knew for a while. It was just fluid, very easy to talk to.
Yep. And yeah, the interactions I had, I guess we can kind of jump into the experience a little bit, but
Yeah.
especially the interactions I had with my, most of my set interactions were like, oh yeah, we don't really do sets. That's hard for us to move. But a lot of the interactions with the packs themselves, like you could tell a lot of people didn't really know much about them. Like there's one guy who like wanted to see him, and he's like, are they long crimp? And I was like, no, they're straight from the booster box. He's like, oh, okay, but like, do they have like the long things on top? Like, no, like they came from a booster box. Like they're all short, and two of them are heavy. He's like, oh, so like how much you want? And he was like real weird talking to me. He was like trying to do another deal on the side of the table, and he'd like ask me how much I want, and then he'd like go to these other guys, and then he'd be like, oh, okay, so what were you at again? And it was just a lot of nervous talk and a lot of like things that people said that you could tell they were like not really 100% sure what they were talking about. But yeah, Nerdy Bird who bought the packs for me, like he had a scale on him. I told him, I had a scale if he needed one. He's like, "Oh yeah, well, I got one in here somewhere." So he knew what he was doing, Wanted to check the packs for sure. He knew the weights of them. Um, but yeah, real solid dude.
And I was gonna say that same guy that you mentioned that was like kind of rude, borderline rude. Um, he's that same guy was one of the individuals that really didn't have, it seemed like had a lot of experience, especially with WotC. And it seemed like some of his knowledge was almost superficial. what he did have. Um, he had a pretty good deal on what looked to be like I didn't get to look at it because I kind of got distracted, but I called you because it was a Red Cheeks Pikachu and it looked undervalued. And then I just kind of forgot to go back. He had it on for like $8 or $10. And I was like, does he know what he has? Or is he just trying to sell it like a shadowless Pikachu for just real cheap? I mean, even on eBay, they're going in rough condition with like 30. That right there, that being that off on something that is a pretty notorious base set air, and kind of reeled to me like he didn't know what he was doing in terms of Watsy. And he had a bunch of moderns around his table. I think he had like he was selling booster boxes, and he really wasn't interested in buying. And he was definitely younger, and he might have been having some like social anxiety too. Like I get it, you're surrounded by all people, you can't move. You got people moving. If you got ADHD, it would make you really uncomfortable if you're in the same spot. And I try not to use that against him, but his manner and like not being able to directly talk to people, I thought was kind of frustrating. And
Yeah, it
which,
was hard to like even conversate.
yeah,
But
but
yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell the an experience level from all the dudes, and yeah, it was just weird. But and like some interactions, like you'd walk up and you'd be interested in a card, and they tell you a price that was like $10 off before you even mentioned it. It's like, oh well, that's what I was gonna offer you in the first place. Um, so I'm gonna go $10 lower. So it's just weird negotiation. You felt like you were like, or I felt like I was in control of the negotiation a lot of times, which
yeah,
is
and
good for me.
I
But
yeah, I do think sometimes you have some individuals that might not exactly come from retail per se, or even sales, and they might not kind of know the language and kind of the behavior and like the routes you got to take. Like it's like a process. It's like a natural process. It's every one of these deals can be broken up. Every single bartering can be broken up to the same few concepts. Like you gotta, if this goes this, you gotta do that. That sort of mentality. And you can tell some of these people didn't have that background, didn't have that experience, and they might not learn it per se, or might not learn it for a while. So honestly, if you know what you're doing in sales and know how to haggle, I mean, you could probably get a good deal over a few of these people for like 75% of these vendors,
yeah,
because definitely could easily control the conversation with some of these individuals. I mean, some of them did honestly kind of portray the stereotype associated with TCG and nerd fandom, and it showed in some ways with their, I don't want to say the inability to speak to people, but like their lack of knowledge in this field of sales. Because ultimately, you need to know sales. You need to know how to speak to people well if you are in this sort of line of work. You could easily get walked all over.
yeah. And I feel like if I stuck it out with some of those guys, like yeah, I probably could have got a better deal, but it would be like kind of stepping on them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it just shifted our outlook of sealed mostly. I think that was our biggest thing, and I knew it was a problem. I've been hearing all these people dealing on eBay with new modern product, and people seeing the Logan Paul video are like the newcomers to the hobby. They get so sketched out about everything they buy sealed.
They were shook.
Yeah, I mean, even with like
Shook like
brand
G.I. Joe.
brand new booster boxes. And so, it's mostly like paranoia and dealing with people on eBay, which is just another thing. But, Rusty is getting cards from Japan that are resealed from EV Heroes because it's going so crazy over there. So there's even modern Japanese problems. And yeah, I don't know. It just makes me not want to be in sealed at all. I mean, unless you get it from a reputable person and you like have that set in stone and documented, you have to think about like when you want to sell. So like, yeah, the person, you might buy it from someone who has like 1,000 followers on Instagram that you've been watching for 4 years, and you know they're legit because he does a booster box opening. You buy it, you get the pack straight from the box. Good for you. And it's a solid way to get a pack. But if you sell it to like a company or like someone else, they don't know that person. So you really gotta think of those things. And it's almost deceiving because you're seeing a lot of the people on YouTube that have a lot of followers and subscribers, and they're buying boxes from people who also have a lot of subscribers and followers, and all is fun and dandy, but that's not the usual interaction. Usually selling to someone you don't know, and they don't know where you got it from. So
And the whole aspect of sealed product now, especially with how this trend is, and you have to wonder. I would hope that a lot of these younger vendors would learn and grow with the hobby. But you could also argue, how many of these vendors will still be here in 5 years? That's also another thing. Not saying the market's going to shrink or the hobby's going to shrink. No, I just wonder how many of these people will be able to continue long-term success, or if they'll cash out and sell to somebody, which you'll also have. You'll see a consolidation as the years go by, because right now, for some people, the money seems good, but in 5 years, when they're still making potentially not too much off what they're making now, and they're frustrated, you could see them just call it quits and sell and move on.
yeah,
But anyways, what I was getting at, in 20 years, what you could potentially have for some of the sealed aspect is going to be the same thing. Like in 20 years' time, EV Heroes, especially EV Heroes, actually, even the Evil Heroes box, the collection box. I mean, there's the Celebrations UPC potentially even. I mean, there's several things you have to wonder how hesitant they'll be in buying them. I think you will have that. And I think it's a legit concern. And you're hoping these people will grow with the hobby and know how to spot it on some of these. But you could also have new people, again, in 15, 20 years, being a lot, like potentially the next hype. Who knows? And they be the next catalyst and the next bringers or whatever of the charge in the hobby with new vendors. And it'll be the same thing. It'll be difficult to sell. And then even if you try to sell on eBay, we've already seen it with Modern English. Hell, somebody gave me almost a negative, it was a neutral review, not negative, neutral, being like, I can't prove these Evolutions ETBs were open, but I didn't pull anything. And I was like, son of a bitch. Are you serious? I pulled those things from Walmart shelf myself as the person, as the distributor was like leaving. And yeah, I was like, I even told you this was like over a year ago, a year and a half ago, whatever it was. And I was like, dude, that kind of freaked me out when selling sealed stuff. And at that time, I guess I just couldn't connect the dots because I was just like, these are such good investments for the sealed things that it's a sure thing. I didn't think about potentially, I was just seeing the dollar signs on a lot of this, honestly. I was like, I didn't even think of some of the tangibles and intangibles in selling this product in even 5 to 10 years.
yeah,
And this was a reminder, firsthand, anecdotal experience that maybe I should sell my sealed stuff now rather than wait on it. Sell when I'm basically making a little bit of money on some stuff, breaking even at minimum on everything else. And I'm okay with that. Let's just transfer that money over already in the hobby into something better.
yeah,
And that's essentially what my thought process was the majority of the rest of the Collecticon, driving home from Kansas City. And I think I'm making the right decision. I think if you want to keep sealed, you got to do it with things that you basically want to collect. Like I'm doing it with the Arceus Premium Collection. I'm getting that. I might do it with Celebrations UPC, or not Celebrations, but the Charizard UPC. I might do it with that. Basically, only going forward things I really, really like. Like the EV Hero Craft is cool, but like I don't display that stuff because it risks damage.
yeah,
So I'm not looking at it. eventually it's going to get a value, and I'll be afraid to touch it because every time you touch it, the oil on your hands. And if you touch it with gloves, you run the risk of tearing the saran wrap. I mean,
Yeah, there's no safe way going about it. I mean, and I have a little sealed. I had those packs, but it's like I guess I've been around long enough where I know the good products. So like the only modern products I have is the EV Hero Special Box and the Celebrations UPC as far as my modern sealed goes.
hmm
But yeah, I mean, I'm still thinking about getting rid of those. I mean, you got to think so many people are collecting sealed nowadays because everyone's kind of thinking like that. And yeah, it's a good thought, but I mean, then you run into all these other problems, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like the headache is worth it. But
well, I'm to say, in addition to all that, there's other factors at play. Right now, the market is in a heavy, heavy downturn. A lot of times, it might take like 6 months. I shouldn't say a lot of times, but oftentimes it takes like 6 to 9 months before you start seeing the effects of some of that. And now it's interesting when dealing with the collectible, especially Pokemon, because of the demographics that several demographics now, because it's different. We were able to identify there are different markets, so there's now different demographics occurring within Pokemon, which is just an example of its growth. And with those demographics, even with this financial downturn, you have like your 18 to 25, those who probably are mostly not good with money. They'll still probably spend even in bad times. But then you're starting to have other parts of the demographics that might not be spending and affected and might have potentially overextended themselves. So my fear is what you're going to see is you're going to see potentially a sellback, getting rid of offloading certain products, especially modern sealed. And you could see this upwards over the next couple of years. And if you're a long-term hodler, okay, whatever. But inevitably, this is going to also make the 5-year outlook be extended to get to the point where you want because of this. And that, with just inflation, basically, money in the future being less now, I mean, get my money out of it, put it into something else better, something that's stronger within the hobby, because this is my fun money.
yeah,
But those are all factors to consider whenever you're dealing with seal product. And there was one thing after another that started just like alarms going off, not just in my head, but in front of me with kind of the market outlook for sealed. And I was just like, you know what? I already said this with most English sealed I got out of. Well, I think it's time to pretty much do it all, just about all together. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm already going through a few people trying to sell it. I'm giving this one people that we liked a lot first dibs, but we'll see what happens.
yeah. And it's good not to make rash decisions like in the collecting, but yeah, you definitely got to take it slow for sure. But
Let's see. What about? I can't believe this. I can't believe this, Nathan. We haven't mentioned the best part of the Collecticon, have we?
Vanilla Ice.
Oh my God. He was the highlight. Oh my God. No, no. I can't even laughingly say that. Okay. So, to give you an example of what it's like hearing Vanilla Ice in concert about 50 yards away. Well, imagine, if you will, a 747 airliner going off right next to you, and you have no way of shielding your ears.
Yeah,
And then
not
somewhere
to
you got
mention
you,
this is all in a giant like single room where the sound can't escape.
and there's more bass than anything else. Like it was all bass. Like I could kind of make out some words, but it was so much bass. I couldn't even hear people talking right beside me. I had to like basically put my ear up to their mouth pretty much in order to hear them.
Yeah, and
Especially when you're trying to make deals.
We were like 2 tables from like as far away as possible that we could be, but it was still so loud. And while we were doing deals, just everyone was just laughing at how ridiculous it was and all that. But
Listen. Ugh.
I mean, yeah, the Vanilla Ice. I mean, they just need to change up the entertainment a little bit. I mean, I don't know. It's a meme at this point, and some people still enjoy it, but they need to. I don't know. They need to calm it down a little bit. You can tell everyone was kind of over
Hated
it,
it.
and yeah,
I
but
haven't seen a place clear out that fast since. I mean, I don't even know what example to use. It felt like the place just like scattered. Like the people were like, "Please help me," essentially. And I mean, everybody. I didn't hear one person that said, "Oh my God, did you hear Vanilla Ice?"
but there was, a lot of people must have came to see what it was about. A lot of average people, just there seeing what it was about. Because after Vanilla Ice, like 2 p.m., the place cleared out. I mean, it was quiet. They were just doing some interviews up on the stage, and that's about it. But I mean, it was
Yeah.
quiet. You could make deals. People were clearing out, much less busy. And yeah, overall, it was really solid after that. And even the second day, like Vanilla Ice didn't sing at all Sunday, so it was a much more chill experience.
The only concern I had was there was significantly less people on the second day. The clearing out kind of makes sense, but I think this is just the second year that they've done this, right, in Kansas City or in general, like their little tour that they have. And I want it to continue because this was awesome, like a great experience, and I hope they continue to build on it because this thing could be huge. And I want this because this is such a great place if you're a fan of Pokemon, or not even just Pokemon. This had an incredible selection of Dragon Ball Super, Yu-Gi-Oh! I even saw Digimon.
Yeah. And
I mean,
Metazoo, can't forget Metazoo.
Metazoo! Oh my God, how can we not forget Metazoo? The lines were just going from one point of the center to the other. I just couldn't believe it. No, I'm kidding. There weren't any lines.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I saw. Like CollectCon is great, especially for Pokemon, because we didn't really have a good event for Pokemon, and they really kind of took it all in. But a lot of it started with Metazoo. Like Metazoo and whatnot are like two really big key factors for CollectCon in general. And I really don't see Metazoo holding up. I mean, I almost felt bad. I like seeing competition or, friendly card games. It's cool seeing the cards and the art
Hmm.
style, but I mean, we can both tell you there wasn't much happening as far as people buying and selling Metazoo. I mean,
And I think
by far the best was Pokemon, but
honestly, I think there are some people that are legitimately interested in Metazoo, and for those that are legitimately interested, I do hope that it does do well for them, and so they can keep on collecting these cards. And I did see a couple kids that did. I mean, they were with their dad or grandpa or whatever that they were buying some Metazoo products. So I mean, there's clearly some kids that are all about it. However, you kind of have to wonder how much of that is it because of these people that they're watching on TikTok, Instagram, whatever. You have to wonder if that's playing a role in
well, that's exactly
buying
what
them.
it is, and there's something that they built off the hype, and so naturally it was overhyped because that's what it was built on.
Hmm.
And now they're back to kind of where they should be and taking things nice and slow, but they went from being like this big hype to like not as much now, so that doesn't really vibe too well. But it's where they
Um,
should have been. As far as new company coming up, and yeah, they'll still be around. So it's good to
yeah,
see.
like I think the competition is great, honestly. Like I know we kind of like give Mizzou a little bit of a nudge, but you know, like before our last episode, we did kind of tease them a little bit, but honestly, after kind of reading some of the people that are interested in some of the Facebook groups and even the Discord, I do want it to continue having or trying to have a success. There's apparently a TV show coming next year or something. I don't know how that's going to be.
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually interested in seeing that. I'm really interested because that could make me like the products if it's a decent show. But a lot of people think it's going to be EOA, so we'll see. Um, but
Yeah,
I
they could.
still, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's plenty of stuff they could change up. I mean, to improve it, those are a couple things. But we talked about there being more of a con based thing, like more games, more events, or they could do like best dressed or something like that.
Yeah, there was some
So
pretty cool cosplayers, and we saw Sora. We saw several Soras.
I tell you what, like honestly, or Kingdom Hearts was up there for like the most cosplays. I feel like
Which
maybe
was
maybe I just recognized them over everybody else, but it seemed like I saw a
well,
lot.
there. I mean, there was cosplayers, right? I saw Bakugo. I saw I saw several Demon Slayer characters, but I was just a little surprised to see so many Soras and Kingdom Hearts people. I was like, was there something I missed? Is there a reason to see in this concentration, this density? Was this, or did people just like, oh, people that are a fan of Pokemon and like these TCG are also a fan of Kingdom Hearts? I don't know.
And I tell you, man, Kingdom Hearts fans, they're
I mean, I love me some
true
Kingdom Hearts.
fans.
Like Kingdom Hearts 2, I put significant amount of hours into that game, and it was all on a 13-inch TV.
I'm just saying, Kingdom Hearts, they show up. Those fans show
Yeah,
up.
yeah. I mean, it was great. I don't think we saw any Kingdom Hearts cards though there.
No, I was looking too, but didn't see any. But this con was in general a lot smaller than some of the other ones. Especially, we had Long Beach right before this, and that place was huge, which you can only imagine. But I feel like Kansas City, like Long Beach went from the biggest one to Kansas City maybe being the smallest. I mean, maybe the Charlotte, North Carolina one was about similar size, but yeah, a lot of people didn't go to this one because of the signing events. There's a couple signing
Yeah.
events going on and another Collecticon type event going on somewhere else. So I think Arita was doing a signing, and then like there was another signing on top of that, and then another like con like event. So there's a lot of other stuff going on, and this one wasn't the biggest one in general.
Yeah, I think
But
if they can potentially encourage more cosplayers, like have an award, and I was kind of hoping to see. There was only like two comic vendors, and one of the ones was like older comics that I wasn't really interested in, so I didn't really give too much of a deep dive. Another one had like graded comics from CGC, but I was hoping to see a little bit more of those, and we didn't. And I was hoping to see more variety. There was some variety, like independent sellers were there. There's some cool like design for like posters that was there. There's really cool artworks, especially like by independent artists, really awesome. I honestly would want to see more of that.
yeah, yeah, they could expand like so much. I mean, but yeah, I think they're already booked the area for Kansas City next year, so maybe they're keeping the same venues. But we'll be there, I'm sure. So if you guys are going or want to
Absolutely.
go, have to meet up.
Anything that can offload, I will be going there. I don't know what my goals will be wanting, but I can almost guarantee, unless something happens, that we will be there.
Yeah, it's almost like a benefit just to have a stockpile to bring there because, yeah, you can sell stuff and buy stuff throughout the year, but it's just so nice like doing deals and trades and stuff like that. And that's what the fun part about it.
Yeah, the trade part especially, like you can't do that. A lot of people, I mean, I am unwilling to trade over somebody I've never met. The likelihood of being scammed is too high, even if it's like just a couple percent. That's still a lot more percent, significantly more percentage points than I would deal with in person. Like I would never deal with that at all in person, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are obviously other circumstances you can think of, but overall, like especially at a venue like this, like I don't have that issue. Like I trusted a lot of these people pretty well, like off the bat. So it's the fact that if you are here willing to spend money to be here, I doubt you are trying to fool anybody.
Yeah.
That was my thought process.
Yeah, and with the booster boxes too, I mean, back in the day when PokeTubing was really early, like when I first did it, like 2010 or so, 2011, like you would do trade cards by mail where whoever was more reputable would, you know, the other person would send them the cards first and then they would make a video and then you would send cards back to them. It was like through a mail system, like TCBMs is what they were called, trade cards by mail. And so, yeah, there was a lot more trust because there was a lot less of a community then. If you had like 1,000 subscribers, you were huge. And same with the booster boxes now, like with the trust issues of being resealed and not, it used to be you only had to worry about buying it yourself, that it was legit. Selling it, you could throw it up on eBay and then, you could sell anything on eBay. But now you got people complaining when they open the box and they don't pull anything. So that's changing too. So it's just a lot of things changing. A lot of my mindsets are changing. And, really, I took a step back and just once again, just buy what I collect. I bought a few set cards. I bought a couple cards on my wish list. I'm just really going to focus on my goals and, not really worry about too much else because the too much else is boring stuff like sealed that is sketchy now anyway, or stuff that I end up trimming from my collection later on anyway. But what was your biggest takeaway? And then I guess we could pretty much wrap up the main.
Well, one of the things I also noticed was there's no video games. And I thought that was interesting because some of the video games that we saw there was a lot of WADA. And a lot of people are probably familiar with the whole issue with the WADA pyramid scheme essentially that was going on. And a lot of their product has been great and is out there. And it's interesting because some of the prices some of these people are asking for are so ridiculous. And they're in a WADA case. And at this point, I don't know how you can actually give any WADA graded copy validity. But I would like to see like a retro game, more vendors like that. Now, I just want to add that on real fast. Now, my biggest takeaway of this is the Pokemon hobby is in a great spot. That was the main thing. Even though, yeah, there was issues with, like, there's clearly a WotC and modern divergence. It was never more evident than seeing it firsthand. And it's you almost could argue in some ways maybe modern has much more people than WotC. I mean, a lot of people like WotC, but there seems to be a lot more focus on modern. And I think that's fine. It's just interesting to see Pokemon being big enough to have several demographics within the market and strong enough demographics to be able to very easily influence. And I thought that was really interesting to see. And it was also kind of a reminder that I am getting older.
Yeah,
I'm no longer the spring chicken I thought I was. I mean, I'm still young. We're still young, but like, we're no longer the youngest demographic anymore.
Yeah, maybe we have those goggles on that we can't see that, but I mean, yeah, we were talking to Bone Club Collectibles for a little while, and he was just like us. He's like, I can't believe that I could have a mint shiny Steelix out on my table for 10% off market value at $200, and then people want to buy this alt art that just came out a month ago that doesn't show the same promise. It's not as cool. Like, essentially he had like the alt art that came out a month ago for the same price, and he couldn't believe how Like, the Steelix sat there 10% under value, while that sat there at market value, and people want to buy that stuff more. So yeah, in general, we're in like a massive downtrend because we were so hyped up, but it's like modern product and, especially alt arts are all the craze right now. I mean, they're still very strong, probably almost hyped as they ever were. A lot of people were looking at people's, what was it? The guy had EV Heroes boxes, and there's a lot of interest in those. They were sold out the second day.
They were. There's only like one or two left, and I almost bought one, but he had like his sticker on there, and I was like, I'm not buying it to open. It would just be strictly to keep sealed.
Yeah,
So I didn't want it because of it, honestly. But there are people that were buying it just to open it, which is a great set to open, by the way. Definitely recommend. And I hope they enjoyed it.
yeah.
But
So yeah,
yeah,
we're in a big downturn, but I mean, there's a lot of activity going on despite that. So
mhm.
it's a very healthy downturn, if that makes sense.
And being able to see how, well, it wasn't quite the turnout I was hoping for day two and for its potential long-term success. One thing I couldn't help but notice was just this overall hype that you still see around some of these all stars. Like, yeah, they are decreasing, but some of that hype and the overall plurality of how many individuals are interested that are within the modern market. And you almost have to wonder, like, is modern that much higher right now than WotC? Like, sometimes, like, if you're in your own like bubbles, you lose track of reality. And Nathan and I, we're in a lot of areas that has a lot of people that like WotC and early Pokemon, and you see that, and you're not in these TikToks groups or social media or whatnot. You're not following these whatnot streams trying to get these mystery boxes because we realize that's not what we want. We realize that's not the best way to spend our money. But there's clearly enough that it's dictating in some ways. I mean, it's dictating the market in a lot of ways,
Yeah,
and that's from having a lot of people, and that also indicates it's very strong. And I couldn't help by seeing this strength, and obviously being aware that Pokemon was like top three the last several months in submissions and rating by PSA. And you see this growth, you see this excitement, this hype around the hobby, and it's like this is starting to feel just like the sports market, straight up. I mean, that's what it's starting to feel like.
yeah,
I mean, I don't see Pokemon doing numbered cards like the sports market, but I mean, it's there's the money is starting to get there. The vendors, the businesses starting to surround it. I mean, it's kind of unreal to see that this is all around Pokemon.
yeah. The hype's there. I just worry, like, or I wonder how much, a couple months after a set's released, how it doesn't really hold up. It does kind of fall off, and
Yeah,
EV Heroes and Evolving Skies is a different story because it's like the poster boy of the entire era. But the other sets. Look at the other sets. I mean, they're not really doing too well. Sure, the biggest chase alt art is staying up there, but
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is the
I
alt
mean
arts are
that
still
that's
really good.
about it. I mean, alt arts, like, I would actually collect alt arts in modern,
Absolutely.
but that's really about it for me. I mean, there's just so much of the other stuff opened. Yeah, they made the alt arts pretty hard to pull, but they almost had to with how much they're printing. Like, just think of how many cars are printed now and how many people open it on all these streams. They have to make them super rare. So super rare relative to like how many boxes you open, but there's so many more boxes being opened now today than there has been ever. So it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, the only other thing I have that we haven't touched on is the little Lorcana news.
Oh.
If you
I
wanted
will.
to touch on
Well, I would
that,
say
or
real fast. Here's one more thing I wanted to say about the event. So one thing that this is just one person and a vendor would confirm this story. How apparently there's amazing deals to be had for the early access. We chose not to get the early access because we weren't sure if it was worth it. Now this guy swears that there's great deals to be had. I still don't know if I believe that, but if there's really good cards on certain items, I guess it's possible. But seems like we'll have to try out next year with the early access
yeah,
and just see if it was worth it. Might
kind
have
of
to
I
stay.
wanted to initially, but then I was like, well, I don't really need to rush in. I'm not looking for something, but if I was prepared, like I'd like to, like you really have to know your prices and you'd be able to walk the booths before anyone else and just pick out what's a good price.
And focus just on specific things that you're looking for within your collection. Like for example, like we're both trying to find Neo Hollows, but we're trying to have fun doing it. Like trying to search. We're not trying to. I'm trying to find it as cheap as possible, best condition as possible. I'm not necessarily going to get that online. But I mean, if you try to do that, you're going to be spending too much time sifting through binders. So it's like almost got to be like one you can see immediately and just move on. And be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, okay, sorry, I need to move on. I got
Well,
I
and
got
you
an
you
hour
have
to
to
get
go
here.
in there with cash too, like ready to
That too.
buy. But the
You
best
can't be trying to
buying
trade.
opportunity is, the second day. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of counterproductive in a way, but good in other ways.
Hmm.
Like those Bidoofs, like I should have got the second Bidoof, or
And I should have got the other one from the same
yeah,
vendor.
because
It's
they were
just I
actually
chose I chose not to.
underpriced.
Yeah, we realized that later, like that same time, like I didn't realize that they had shot up to basically 300.
Yeah.
And last I looked, the lowest one was 225, and that was just like a month and a half ago. I was shocked to see that. So
Well, I think a lot of that is on the back of Charizard. Like a lot of people thought
yeah,
Charizard would be the guy, and I think he will, like in tens long term, like I said, but long term. But people are seeing how many there are, how many codes there are, and they're realizing like Bidoof. I mean, we really never heard a whole lot of those coming to market, and so yeah, they're kind of taking off because Pikachu was never as much as Bidoof because it was more available, or people got more of a heads up, I would say. And Charizard, there's just so many of, so Bidoof has taken the lead for now.
and it has a natural scarcity factor working for it.
Yeah, Bidoof people knew about, like a lot of people knew about, and it was still peak pandemic essentially. So yeah, I think it's pretty limited, but
Compared to the other two, in my opinion, anyways. I think that one's the least out of all three of them.
yeah. But yeah, with the Lorcana news, we were, the whole time going around the convention whenever we thought about it, we didn't ask everybody, but we were asking people, hey, have you heard of Disney Lorcana? Have you heard of that? And if we don't count this one guy, I would say it was 50-50. Like either people didn't have no idea or people heard about it and they're like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that. We're kind of
And,
watching it."
and some people are like, "Yeah, I heard about it." Kind of seemed like they were just kind of like pulling it out of their ass, like they were just trying to like act like knowledgeable. I got that vibe a few times, but perhaps I was mistaken in my interpretation.
Yeah.
But
At most it was like, "Oh yeah, I have heard about that. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool, I think." Like that's about it. Until we ran across this one guy. But he yeah, well, this was the guy. I actually bought a Charizard from a Japanese set from these guys, and we were just sitting there kind of talking. This was like towards the end of day 2 as well, so not much happening. We're just sitting there chit chatting, and we said, "Hey, have you heard of Lorcana?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we're going heavy in Lorcana." And so
because the guy from St. Louis too, we found out. I have his card somewhere, but we won't say it.
yeah, this is like, which I looked him up on Instagram. All his accounts are pretty small, so keep this in mind. We don't know how knowledgeable this guy was or how credible he was. We did have a good conversation before this, so maybe he was just telling us stuff just to get us hyped. Maybe he bought 3 sets and he's trying to, have them go up. Because, essentially that's what we're doing. We're trying to spread the word. We believe in it and we want to get people knowing about it. because there's only 900 copies of these things. That's not a lot at all. I mean,
Mm-mm.
if even if the game flops like 900 people, I mean that's enough to really send them sky high. But he knew his stuff. He actually knew about the sets, knew the cards. He was mostly collecting utility cards because they were into Magic a lot. He's like a Magic supplier out of St. Louis. And, in Magic, the cards that are worth the most are the cards that are playable. Um, but there's not really collectible cards in Magic. And Lorcana is kind of hitting both worlds, like the playability of Magic and the collectability of Pokemon, which is good. So he said he was going all in. And essentially, he said he was in the Discords. And the Discord talks, I don't know if this happened with the creator or what, but there was talks about a potential Pro Tour like event, which is essentially like a tour or like a Friday night Magic system that you see with Magic, where you can like play and earn points and then go on to bigger events, and essentially how the like state championships, regional, world event works in Pokemon. Essentially something in the works along those lines. Now, once again, we have no idea how credible this guy is. Could just be pulling it out of who knows where. But when he said that, I mean, it honestly gave me goosebumps because, that's where you think of things heading with a card game like this, trying to be competitive. But, it's just good to hear someone else think that. There's a vendor at like one of these events and who's like really into it. So who knows? I mean, it's got some crazy potential for sure. I mean, that's easy to see,
Yeah,
but if something like this
going.
happens, it's going to be nuts.
Yeah, I'm actually have my cards with me right now, and just got my Mickey promo in today, and this was the reason why I didn't spend that much um, at the event, and I'm actually trying to sell some of my stuff in part to get a second one. I don't know if I will be able to do that in time. We'll see. One of the people I was trying to sell to did PM me right as we began our podcast, so I wasn't able to see it if that deal is going to go through or not. But I'm trying to get a second one because I believe in it that much. And if not, I'll just get a bunch of more Mickey promos because I thought it was a 10, but then small little edgeware that might make it go down to 9, maybe even worse. It's like it's a near perfect card beside that one spot. Very, very disappointing, and couldn't even see that in the photos. Want to be able to see that in the photos. It's just it's so small, but it's. I mean, it could go either way. It could be a 10, could be a 9, could be a 6.
Yeah.
It's
It's
like a 30-30-30. But I mean, these cards were all made in crap condition. Like they weren't the best quality. But I mean, they are gorgeous. Like the foil ones of the D23 Expo set is just, I mean, jaw dropping. I mean, it's got that aesthetic feel of Pokemon out the gate, and
yeah,
that's notable.
it's awesome for sure. And then yeah, just seeing the prices they're going for, which I'm actually looking them up now, which
Yeah,
I got a little update for you.
one sold for 3,000, but I'm not so sure about that one.
Well, yesterday they were 2100 it looks like, but today and the end of like last night, I see 2600, 3000. Here's another one. There's a Elsa that sold alone for 449.
What? I didn't get the notification for that. Oh.
It does
See,
it.
that's probably going to be, in my opinion, that's going to be the card.
It has a lot
Is
of silvering though. It has those silver dots that I was mentioning.
well,
But
it might not be worth it, but
here's a
well, I mean,
signed one.
500
Here's a signed one with a Mickey that sold for 3,900.
going ham.
Here's
See,
another one 3,000 with a signed booklet.
see, I with mine. Like whenever I just do like this set of six cards, I looked at it, unless this is in the last like hour or two. That's interesting because I didn't see the 2600 one or the Elsa being sold either. Um, the Mickeys are still relatively affordable. I guess, got
Which
in a
they're
good
they're pushing
time.
at 300 now with like the non-signed ones for buy it now.
Well, you can still get like if you look at the auctions, you can still usually get them around under 250.
Yeah.
But yeah, these sets. I mean, here's okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and say my opinion on it. I don't really consider ourselves social media influencers. I'm not saying anybody should go stretch themselves to buy this item. I do not advise that. We're not financial advisors, but here's my opinion on the set. I think at minimum it doubles between now and launch, maybe even more. Disney collectors are the most uh, loyal and sensational and rabid of
And
any fan
buyers of
base.
random shit.
$100 popcorn buckets. I mean, so basically, in my opinion, the chance of it substantially decreasing in value are substantially lower than the chance of it significantly increasing in value. And I think that percentage and that chance, like it's hard to like properly evaluate it like objectively. Like this is like subjective, mostly subjective in terms of my interpretation of some of the numbers. First off, we in the last podcast we thought 350, maybe 500 that these things will come out the gate. We were wrong. I am shocked at how wrong I was. No, I'm not saying I'm not a narcissist. I realize that sounded very narcissistic, but I mean that in like a good way. Like
I get
I
it. Like
misinterpreted. Yeah, I
I
misinterpreted
threw
everything.
500 out there, and in a way, like we were right. That is what the first ones went for. But it's just the fact that people, I don't know, there's just a surge of people like buying them up that they just shot up. But
Yeah. I mean, if I can't get if the set goes out of my reach, I plan on buying just a bunch of Mickeys because I think that card on launch day is going to be over $1,000. $1,000 raw. That's my. It was already reaching that out the gate. Obviously, first the market was at lower, but it stayed steady at like 500, 600 too for a while. Like a lot sold at that price. And if that many sold with such little knowledge surrounding this already, what do you think it's going to sell whenever the whole mass of Disney's behind it?
yeah,
When
man,
everybody, Disney is a conglomerate. Like, I mean, okay, so Disney is a truly an American company. And one of the things when you talk about investing in stocks, like blue chip stocks, Disney is one of those. Betting against Disney is betting against America. That is one of the easiest analogies I can make. Is like if you like Disney is one of the biggest exporter of entertainment. Disney has his hands in so much stuff, so many different markets, so many different companies that they are a massive part of America's culture, America's identity. I mean, in many cases, I mean, America's economy. I mean, they are keeping single-handedly movie theaters alive at this point.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah,
I
and you
mean,
just think like their reach is so big. We've mentioned before, Pokemon is the best, highest grossing media franchise, but Disney owns like 5 of the top 11 or something like that. Like Disney is bigger for sure, and they're not like Japanese company Pokemon like being very strategic and want to think out their product releases and all this. They're gonna throw this everywhere.
I think they have the resources to already get into the big box stores immediately. They can get the word out easy because they could have fluff pieces on numerous of their news broadcasts. Like the hype is getting big for Lorcana, like on ABC or I mean they own a big portion of Fox now, almost all of Fox. I mean,
All the kid shows are gonna have commercials
yes.
for it.
Oh my God. Like they control all of that.
And not only
And
that, like Ravensburger and their villainous board game with Disney is already like a pretty good hit. I mean, I went to Barnes and Noble the other day. It's in Target, it's in Barnes and Noble, it's at like our local game store. It's everywhere. And the shelf for it at Barnes and Noble was empty aside from one box. And then I walked around, and right in the middle of the store, like one of the fixtures right in the middle of the hallway, essentially, as you walk in, was nothing but villainous, like front and center to sell it.
it's a pretty big seller. I think the Marvel sold like 3 million copies or something like that. Or maybe it's the whole villainous line, but I do know they've done amazing. There's a reason why Disney is trusting Ravensburger to do this. And I mean, you hear these creators talk, and I mean, they're doing everything right. They are doing absolutely everything right. And I mean, people are all like, like they're hesitant, right? Like, and it's like, you know, don't hurt me, sort of vibe. And people want to jump into it, and people are already jumping hard into it. It has the potential to be more playable than Pokemon because most of us collect Pokemon. And, Pokemon's trying to get people to play it. It's potentially simple enough for anybody can play it, and relatable to anybody to play it. Parents can play it with their kids, and parents can have fun too because it's the same character that they knew or that they know, and because that nostalgia factor is already there, they already have what Pokemon has spent the last 25 years building. They got 4 generations of that.
Yeah.
I mean, they already got the nostalgia factor. That's let's just get that out of the way. Like they already have that. And we see these foil on these cards. They got that foil down already. They got that beautiful aesthetic feeling. And the design, at first I was unsure about the card's design, but honestly, the more I look at it, the more I like it. Like I like the design of their cards. So they got the aesthetic feel. I mean, if that gameplay goes down, boom, there you go. I mean, they're already a successful TCG, and they're going to wedge themselves right past Yu-Gi-Oh! And pretty much right up to Magic and Pokemon.
Yep, it's got some crazy potential, and this guy, he was on board too, but that's what the main factors were, for you selling your collection or selling a lot of stuff and going through it again. I'm more focused on Pokemon. Like, yeah, I want to get another set of Lorcana, but I'm gonna go about it methodically. Like, if we can sell a lot of stuff from this order, I'm gonna focus on my sets first because it's not that much, and then maybe if I have enough to cover another set and beyond, I'll get one. But yeah, it's definitely gonna be crazy either way. Like the guy said at the con, like, the peak, if we're seeing a peak like 2 months after release, maybe that's the time to sell. Could go on beyond that, but you're going to have a selling opportunity very close to launch if you really want to get out of it. And then
And I
it
think
might
it's
cool off as the hype
yeah,
dies down, and then it's essentially going to be like a curve like we've seen in Pokemon many times. The initial hype will kind of die down. As launch gets closer, it's going to uptick. People are going to learn about these cards. Lorcana is going to be big news a couple months in. Everyone's going to be playing it. It's going to
fourth
be
quarter,
fresh.
Christmas. It's gonna
Yep.
be everywhere.
It's going to be fresh. It's going to be Christmas. People are going to want it for Christmas. And then, as the hype cools down, the cards will kind of go down in price a little bit, stagnate a little bit.
Hmm.
So it might be the time to sell, but if this continues to be a thing and people continue to play, like 5 to 10 years down the road, these could be absolutely insane cards.
Yep. And that's why I want 2 sets. One to sell at launch, one to sell in 10 to 20 years. Basically recoup the cost. That's my thought process around it. Recoup the cost if I have to, if I hit the bad vibe. And if not, hold long term these cards. And I was pretty good with my eye with these cards. Like a lot of these people in this Discord were upset. They're like, oh man, this guy didn't package my cards well, and then you see who they're buying from. Oh, he's got a -1 review. I saw that there was a guy with a -1 review selling one of these sets, $2,000 to $3,000. So I mean, I put, I mean, yeah, there is some blame on the seller, but at the same time, people are spending this much money without thinking about that. That was the first thing I thought of was condition. Can this seller package right? I chose a guy with a 300 rating that was selling sports cards. Boom. And I chose one based on the condition of Elsa and Robin Hood and one other, and those were all good. Of course, the edging you kind of have on all these cards, black border. I imagine they're almost all going to have this. I felt like I did really, really well. I think all of mine are potentially going to grade a 9. The Maleficent was heavy on the border. I think that's going to pull an 8. With Elsa having a chance at a 10, yes, Elsa has a chance at a 10. I'll have to be a little lucky, but who knows? The only issue, centering's perfect, corners are perfect, just that like crappy, like where it was cut on the machine sort of thing. I just think that the upside of this is so big that I cannot pass this up. I can hold off on anything big with Pokemon the next year because, in my opinion, nothing's going to go up so significant. It will go out of my bracket, like my tax bracket, to be able to afford it. I'm not worried about that with anything. I'm not worried about after seeing all these cards and how accessible, how easy it is to get trades, to do all of this. I am not worried about any of that anymore, and it reaffirmed that not only was getting the first set and Mickey a good choice, but getting another is also a good choice. Now, again, do not do that to overextend yourself, to try to get on this hype. That is very, very dangerous. These are expensive sets. These might not be in the best condition. You might get screwed on the seller. There are still some of the people that are still selling it are some of the worst sellers that are still up. And that is notable because eventually that's going to be who's the primary thing. The sellers that are so oblivious to the price of the market, they're just like, oh, $8,000. I mean, that sort of issue. But
It's crazy to
I believe in
see.
it.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how like healthy the discords are and everything right now. I mean, there's people talking in it right now, just discussing things. I guess Miller, one of the designers, they asked him on Twitter. I guess Twitter's the place where they're most active for some reason. They were asking him if there's going to be a first edition stamp on the first chapter cards, and he said he basically can't comment on that just yet. But
I think they're undecided, and I think there's a reason. There is a reason why Pokemon no longer does that, and I don't. Disney really shouldn't be doing that. I think it'd be bad,
yeah,
potentially out the gate, because everybody's going to be like Pokemon First Edition, Pokemon First Edition. Although more people are going to be keeping it sealed. Nobody thought Pokemon would be worth anything, so few people kept them sealed. Um, but it's still the first edition of Disney Lorcana, the opening TCG. It's going to carry a pretty penny, even if people are hoarding it. But I hope they don't go that route because it's going to get ugly if they go that route.
yeah,
Um, and it's going to be bad look for the TCG out the gate. So I think they should stick to exclusive promos. They either have no playability or they have a other variant of the same card, like all arts or something like that, or have the other variant of the same card that can be played. Because they already said that any promo that they have will basically be printed differently, but still playable as a different card, like without the stamp.
yeah. And essentially, if you make a first edition, I mean, there's going to be 3 different copies of, like, you have the Elsa promo, then you have Elsa first edition, then you have Elsa Unlimited. So I think they already meet that collectability factor with these promos, but they're just going to have to come up with a way to distribute them, every so often, which, they have plenty of events, plenty of products to sell that they could toss them in. So,
And you'll no doubt, especially if it kind of enters like a Pokemon sort of thing, they'll have exclusive promos in their parks.
yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be nuts, but we kind of went off there. You can tell how passionate we are with
Oh
Lorcana.
yeah, it has been my driving force. It really has. Like obviously, I'm still buying Pokemon. Um, I mean, I'm looking at Poke Center right now. like,
I almost want
like,
to, like, I could see myself selling, like, I like it and it's solid, but I almost want to buy two so I could sell it, like, in the first hype, like you said, but I mostly want to buy a set, like another set, because my Elsa has like some spots on it, and the Maleficent Dragon has some spots on it. Like I almost want to like keep the better versions, and then sell the other ones pretty quickly, and then just have one set just for fun. But
yeah.
we'll see what happens though. But we are skipping the game on this episode, but we're gonna jump into questions, and then at the end, we'll just give shout outs, and we don't have to elaborate on the shout outs any. We'll just say the name. But
Yeah, we knew we were going to run a little bit long, so we just kind of got rid of the game. But there was a question that we both wanted to bring up today. So,
yeah, well, you got what you got for your question.
okay. So this was, as you mentioned, this was going on at the same time as the KC Con, and there was one of the artists was the Kuki Haito, um, and he's a big time artist. Like he did my RCS card, RCS 4 AR4, the Ice one, and he did like the Poncho Pikachu. Like I mean, almost every major promo was almost him. It seemed like really huge in the Pokemon community, and he was doing a signing in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was disastrous for some people. Absolutely disastrous. It sounded there's people who waited apparently 8+ hours in line for a chance, like 5 a.m. to like people that got in line at like 6 a.m. and they still couldn't get through. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's some people that waited, I think 6 hours and then got cut from the line. Like the people who got the signed stuff had to wait longer because they had to go through the line. But essentially, the first day it was kind of mixed, but the second and third days were horrible because people saw what happened and it just got worse and worse. Essentially, by Sunday, people were lining up at midnight for the signing in the next day. And if you weren't there by 2 a.m. to wait, you pretty much got cut off. Like at some point during the signing, when they actually started the next day, after you already waited there 6 hours for them to open, they counted the people in the line and said, "Okay, we're not going to be able to get to you. You're it. You're cut off." And like the last person who didn't get cut off got there at like 2 a.m. So
I would have been furious if I had to wait 6 hours. Like absolutely furious.
yeah, so
And then
essentially
finally
just
got
to get a signing, you had to be there at 2 a.m. and then wait 6 hours to hopefully not be cut off in line to say that's it. But just miserable
okay.
experience. People got multiple signatures who like waited all days, and then there's people like casual people who can't do that, like have kids and stuff who didn't get any. It was just a nightmare.
Well, with that in mind, would you be willing to spend 8 hours in the line for a Pokemon artist?
Uh, I think I think I could. Like, it'd be no problem with me. I got pretty good stamina with that stuff, but I don't know if I would. I probably would if I really wanted, like, if I loved the artist and really wanted one. I could do it for one signature card, but I wouldn't be waiting in line all 3 days. Like, that'd be way too much. But I could do it for one just to make sure I got one. But I'd have to know, like, I'd be guaranteed to get one.
Yeah, I want to be like I would like throw a scene if I found out I waited like 6, 7 hours in a line and I wasn't even going to get it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I would probably like wait even longer and make sure I was one of the first people
yeah,
just because of that situation. But
that's what I would do as well. You know, if I could have multiple copies signed or not copies but cards by that artist, um, yeah, I'd do it. But if it's just like a one, no, absolutely not. But if I could get like at least two or three, yeah, three preferably if I did that long, and it would be worth it. I mean, there was somebody that was trying to sell an RCS AR4 with it wasn't even a PSA 10, well, like mine is, it was a authenticated um, cookies high too, and they were trying to get 1,200 for it. I mean, and that's the AR4 is the most difficult one to grade in a 10 of that from that set as well. Um, but I mean, if you'd fly out of the way and you had several cards that were worth sign and one for your collection and maybe sell it to anybody, I mean, you could potentially break even on that trip. You know,
Yeah.
like it would be worth it if I can have two or three to sign. But I know some artists like they, you have to do personalization for the cards. So then, I mean, some people might not want that, but some people, if it just has a signature, they don't care.
I saw a
That's how
guy
I would
who
treat.
like got them signed and he removed the personalization with, I guess, acetone or something. But I mean, you really got to be
God, that's
careful with
so
that.
risky.
I
That is
know.
so risky.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
I
I don't
guess
think
he
I.
did it.
Maybe if it was on the slab case or something, I would be willing to do that because then you just like you're not going to destroy the card. So,
Yeah.
like if Kamiya is definitely like my favorite, but this, I mean, this individual is pretty amazing too. But Kamiya and even Kanda, I really like as well. But Kamiya, I mean, I would probably get a few of his cards from first edition, like the Toad. I have that in first edition. I'd probably get that signed, and the Psyduck, and I don't know about the third. I'd have to think about that one. But I mean, if I get all three of those signed, yeah, yeah, I'd probably wait in the line for like 12 hours. And like, okay, I play Pokemon Go, all right. I know how to grind when it comes to doing this. I stayed up over 24 hours on my final grind in Pokemon Go, okay? So I can stay up and wait in line for 12 hours. I mean, I would need to be prepared, but I can do it. Get like a catheter in a bag or something, and
Say back when waiting in line for games was a thing, like I did it very often. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I did that a few times for like the midnight release and stuff, yeah. And then Best Buy for when they made some amazing Black Friday deals. I did that. I hate it. I don't like it doing that for stuff like that, but this is something that I'd be willing to do it for.
yeah,
And but this situation that they're describing, I would have never allow myself to get in that situation, but I wouldn't do it if it was like that. Like you'd be like, "Oh, sorry, you've reached the limit for today." I no. Wait
yeah,
6 hours and you don't even get anything? No, I would no. I absolutely not. I would go off. I really would.
yeah. It just seems like crazy mess. But yeah, for my question, I had essentially with you going through your collection now and committing a lot of money potentially to more Lorcana, like what would you be going for in Pokemon? Like what are your collection goals now that you're going through this whole process?
Um,
Or
so
if Disney
obviously,
was off the table, like if another set was off the table, like where would you go from here?
so I'm not in too much of a rush to like. I mean, I basically have base through Rocket. I'm just missing the Dark Charizard. That's like the only thing I'm missing. And I have everything from Neo besides most of the Hollows. And after being here this collected con, I'm like, you know what? I'm confident I could get a lot of my cards through these places for relatively cheap. So, and for a while, like for like the rest of the decade, I feel like. And I was like, I'm not worried about that. I'm in no rush. It'll be there. And so the other things that I would potentially go after would be you're looking at more of the higher end promos that I've discussed. One of them being the PSA 10 Munch Psyduck. Those are relatively hard to grade in a 10 because of the centering issues associated with that card. Uh, and I mean, the 10s are like basically $700 now, which they are creeping up a little bit. I think some are pushing 800 even 850. and that'd be one of them before that card gets too crazy. And the other one would be the probably end up having to be a raw copy, but a Mario Pikachu would be the other big one. I do still need the Bidoof, but that one I'm not too worried about. That'll be on my. I will be getting that I think this year at some point. Um, and then the other one is the complete vending series as
Yeah.
well. There was a guy that was selling for 750, and I'm like, that's a great deal at the KC Con. It was gone before the end of the first day. I was like, I bet he looks like somebody that took good care of it too. And he says, I actually got his information because he seems like he knows people from Japan, so he can get those pretty regularly. So
Yeah.
I mean, 750 for complete set near mint. I'll take that all every day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I've already said my portion of that, I think. So it's like, I'm after another Lorcana set, but I don't want to jump on it too quick. I get that it might go up and I might miss out, but I'm kind of okay with that too. So just gonna
And
kind
then
of,
you'll speak in a year, man. I should got this set.
well, if I don't get it, it's because I've got some other goals, and yeah, it'll be worth it either way. Because ultimately, Pokemon is where I'm at, and I pretty much sell that if I make anywhere close to being able to get a couple promo cards. So
Well, my thought process is I feel like I'm okay having my cards sit or my like money in the hobby sit in the Lorcana set for the time being over the sealed product because the likelihood of it increasing by more than double is in the next year is too great.
yeah,
And I mean, boom, I sell that. Say if I just sold that right then, I could get everything that I just mentioned and then some. So,
yep. Well, I guess that about does it for the main topic. My shoutouts list, I mean, it's pretty small. I'm just gonna hit the main couple guys. We have Nerdy Bird, guy I sold my packs
hmm
to. He's pretty solid. DSC, DS Collectibles. Those guys are real cool.
yep.
We didn't have any like specific interactions with them, but we had multiple interactions. Like we always caught ourselves going back to that booth.
I got
Really,
my ancient muse from there.
yeah, really cool guys to talk to. Bone Club Collectibles, aka Cubone is Metal. Real solid guy. He bought my sets. He's a genuine collector. They really went to a good home. He made a Instagram post about him already, and I shared it. And definitely well deserved home there. And then I have Win Condition Games. These guys were like super helpful. They had a lot of Wii Swartz cards, and it's like a market that I've been interested in, but haven't really dove in too much. And he was real helpful, showing me some Japanese sites and all that. And pretty solid guys there. I bought a Espeon Neo Hollow from them, so really
Man, they
nice
had a bunch
copy
of
there.
Verse series cards too.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff. But anybody else that I missed that you want to touch on?
I mean, you hit DS Collectibles. They did great value from them, and they're just really pleasant to be around the whole entire time. Gamers Gateway KC. He was a really chill guy. He was down to earth. He really loved the hobby, and he gave me a deal on some. I mean, it was just a bunch of comments from Neo, but he gave me a great deal, and I thought he was really kind. I mentioned Royal Gaming and Collectibles, the ones that could tell about about the actual base set pack. They knew it was legit. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it is what it is if you wouldn't have bought it, but it was nice to be able to add that to the nice weekend. So, and I believe that was it. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and Squeaks. Uh, he bought some of my seal product that I had to sell immediately to try to get the set as well, the Disney set. Thank you. I couldn't have gotten that set without you. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Bring back the podcast. Just make it a solo thing. You don't need anybody. Just
just talk on your own. That's cool. Like I really like Squeaks. he seriously cares about this hobby. He loves it. He's a serious, nice guy. I don't have anything bad to say about him.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, that's gonna do it. Another long episode, and not sure what the next one's gonna be. We're still unwinding, but we'll give you an update on our endeavors over the next couple weeks. We should have the cards back by the next episode, hopefully. Check out on my IG and YouTube. I'll be opening them on camera and showing you guys. But other than that, we'll see you then.
We'll see you next time.
Peace out.